Assalamu alaikum. You're watching Views and News, and I'm Faisal Rahman, live from our Islamabad studios. Today, we have a very interesting story to share with you. And this is not about Kashmir, this is not about Assam, Bihar, or other areas where there is a problem. It's not even about Punjab, it's not even about Haryana, it's not even about the farmers' protest. We're not going to talk about the Article 370 or 35A. We won't be talking about any other change that was brought in by the RSS government of Narendra Modi. But yet we'll be talking about something very interesting, and that is about an incident that occurred a few days ago in Chhattisgarh. Basically, this area was close to the border of Chhattisgarh, a state that has area-wise is pretty huge, and in terms of population, it's a big one as well. But when we talk about the rebels, the Maoist rebels, or we talk about the general rebels out there, those who believe in the philosophy of Marxist and Lenin, and at the same time they believe that there should be an equality in the state. And interestingly, this concept or this particular extremist, I would say leftist and forward block of that, not only has a lot of representation in the domestic politics, but when you talk about Rajya Sabha, they have a seat. You talk about Lok Sabha, they have got 2 seats. You talk about the state, there are about 8 to 10. Followers are all over India. And these people, finally, since they were not given the due, I would say, encouragement when they spoke about their ideas, they were considered as rebels. So the government turned out to be against them. And eventually what happened was, the other day, these rebels attacked a Cobra group of paramilitary forces, police commandos, you may take it this way, and they killed around 22. They kidnapped around 21, more than 35 were injured, so, and few are missing as well. This is the current situation. This is not the first time. This particular incident happened, after a long time, but look at the number. That is something pretty interesting. So, talking about this, today we'll be throwing light on this particular story, in which they have said that 22 Indian police and paramilitary forces personnel were killed, 30 others were wounded in a gun battle with Maoist rebels in a central Indian state in the deadliest ambush of its kind in 4 years. Further says that India's bloody Maoist insurgency began at the remote forests of the state of West Bengal in the late 1960s. Several decades later, it had become, in words for former Prime Minister Manmohan Singh, India's greatest internal security challenge. Maoists are also known as Naxalites. In December 2019, under Modi's Hindu Nationalist Agenda, Citizenship Amendment Act came into power, under which Muslims were targeted and fan protest across India. India is using terrorism as a state policy to destabilize neighboring countries, including Pakistan. India has employed hybrid warfare techniques and using propaganda and support to proxies against Pakistan. But the interesting part is now the number of these people, they are from various religions, primarily the people from the lower class, which is called the Dalits. They have also, in fact, joined this particular group. And the most interesting part is that they are armed, well trained, well equipped, and they have a very, very clear motive. Now, that is the most interesting part. So, we'll be talking about this, we'll be talking about other fault lines in India, and especially in that particular area. Why is it neglected? Is it because the Muslim majority lives in that part? Or is it because those are remote areas and the government of BJP hardly won any seat in the West Bengal, if you remember? A lot of issues are going there as well. You talk about Assam, you talk about Bihar, you talk about Kashmir, you talk about the Indian Punjab, you talk about Khalistan, you go further down, you will be talking about the Tamil side. And interestingly, a lot of people who are supporting them are not only limited to Chhattisgarh or these areas, they're all over India. So, we'll be talking about it. Let me introduce you to our panelists. We have with us in our studio Dr. Tasawwur Hussain Saab. Tasawwur Saab is a senior political analyst. Tasawwur Saab, thank you so much, sir, for your time. And we'll also be talking to Munir Ahmed Saab. He's a senior analyst and he's joining us on Skype. Munir Saab, pleasure to have you, sir. Thank you so much. And Sangeet Khan Saab, he's an expert on foreign affairs, is also joining us. Pleasure to have you, Khan Saab. Thank you so much for your time. Now, talking about this particular incident, sir, this hasn't happened for the first time in India. You talk about various other areas, and there are rebels, there are a lot of presence supported domestically, indigenous, homegrown movements. A few are talking about independence, few want their own ideology should be installed there, few want total separation, few want that CA should be taken back. In Kashmir, people are talking about 370. You talk about Punjab, Haryana. Even you go further down in Rajasthan, the farmers are protesting because of the laws imposed on them. Problem seems to be everywhere, sir. Let's talk about it.
Well, I think that this present situation tells the current state of affairs in India. But if you move back to 1947, then perhaps things would become way more clear and interesting for our audience. So this is what actually Jinnah Sahib actually foreseen, and he was intelligent enough to calculate at that time since 1940s actually. So he was very prudent and sane in his approach when he thought about this separate piece of land for the Muslims of India, because he was a man of vision, and he actually calculated very well that what would be the future of Indian Muslims. And for that matter, he joined this separation, or let's say freedom movement. I believe that the Indian state, it's not new that Indian state is using such tactics which are actually shrinking the space for minorities in India. This is not new. If you go back to even the history of this separatist movement on which we are talking today, it is dated back to 1967.
Yeah.
And basically it began in the Western Bengal. Okay, so now if you check the current facts and current stats of this particular movement, you would come to know that it is now spread over to 106 districts, covering 10 states, 106 districts, and including more than 120 million people. So it tells that what are the Indian priorities. So do they consider human rights? Do they consider the rights of their own people? Do they consider the rights of indigenous people? Because this particular group actually claim itself as indigenous group. So it means that what India is doing today,
Even,
it is...
there is a separate movement going on for Manipur. They
Yes.
have declared a separate homeland, and the person is sitting in UK.
Yes, that's
So,
true.
I mean, that is just one example I'm giving you.
Yes, that's true. But the state of affairs is quite unfortunate, and we need to remind India. When I use word we, I mean that international community actually. So we need to remind India that the present nation-state system is based on contractarian approach, which is there in political theory. And this contractarian approach is that state is in contract with its citizens, and state is supposed to dispense rights which it has promised with its own people, and that is the protection of their life and subsistence. And if any particular state violates its promise with its own people, which is there in that particular contractarian approach, then that state would be ceased to be called as an independent sovereign state. Its sovereignty will go into question. And this is what India is doing. I think that the time has come, and it is a high time for the international community to make India accountable for its atrocities against its own people. And this is what is called as humanitarian intervention in international law.
Yeah. Now coming to you, sir, Munir Saab, I'm sure you must have gone through this story, and because there are so many other stories related to it, because once I started searching on it, honestly speaking, I got to know so many things which I had no clue of, to be very honest. Now this particular attack where the Maoist rebels killed 22 Indian security forces, kidnapped around 2021, wounded around 30. Plenty of them are missing also. But I did not find any story that how many rebels were killed in return. The interesting part is that there not even a single line regarding their casualty was mentioned. So this seemed to be a very organized, very planned attack in which they had a certain idea in the mind and they did it. And now, thank God, this part is much away from Pakistan. Otherwise, they would have also blamed, this incident on Pakistan as well. Now, your take, sir, on this particular incident. How do you see this?
If we take it as a human incident, definitely we have to say like it's a very sad incident. But what has been happening in India, that is really against humanity. Have seen like the rise of Modi with atrocities all over India and Hindutva strengthening more and more in his regime, right from Gujarat rights to this incident. And can you believe like uh, there are several separatist movements in India because of the extremist state-sponsored extremism that the people of India are facing from their own leadership. And let me cite Bapsi Sadhwa. She is a very well-known novelist, and she wrote a novel, and her novel was published in 2006, and that was Cracking India. And she explained the entire scenario of increasing violence and separatism in their own country. But in the backdrop of 1947, she also discussed the reasons for 1947, a division of the subcontinent, where like Pakistan got independence. And afterwards, she explained the reasons why different people will be coming up against the state, and that would crack entire India into different parts. But that is like about 260, 70 page novel, and that discussed the reasons. And between the lines, she discussed Hindutva approach. And in the recent years, we have seen the rise of Hindutva, and that has increased the atrocities. The people are fed up. The citizens of India are fed up of Hindutva itself. You see, when in the COVID-19 were blamed for spreading COVID-19 in India, and we have seen August 5, 2019, an annexation of Kashmir with India. We have seen the atrocities against Sikhs. We have seen atrocities against Dalits, and there are so many incidents where the Indian government, Modi's government, has taken steps against their own people. So hatred has risen to the level where their own people are fighting against their forces. And this is a very unfortunate incident in terms of like the human lives for we lost like but India has to understand, Indian government has to understand, Prime Minister Narendra Modi has to understand that if they will not provide justice, then I was just going through an article on the same issues, and they discussed that India is the federal republic, and parliamentary democracy and judiciary, the most very important components of the state of India. But they are all cracking. Again, the article is very comprehensively discussed that how these three elements of the state have cracked. And again, the article also discussed And fortunately, that it was not written by any Pakistani or anyone else. It was written by the Indian journalist and analyst, and he very extensively write about the reasons the India is cracking, the Federal Republic is cracking, and how judiciary is giving unjust decisions against their own people. So, and the last part that article discussed is media censorship, and the article discussed in detail how the kind of censorship they have. So, all inclusive, this is a very serious situation, and India has to take serious steps to words like reconciliation of the differences that they are having, and stop blaming their neighborhood. And they also need to stop violating the international borders as well. Yes,
All
Faisal.
right. Now, Sangin Khan Saab, it seems that the fire that was in fact fueled by India and primarily to destabilize Pakistan, to hurt Pakistan. So that is burning inside India also. The interesting part is that I was reading this story, and it reminded me of a lot of Indian movies that was based on this particular agenda, that the poor is getting poorer, and then someone rises up and he demands for the rights of those people, and then he was made a hero. But exactly the same situation in reality, when it occurred, those heroes were called rebels, they were called the killers, and interestingly, all those who are fighting on behalf of the poor people in India are considered as terrorists. Your take, sir.
Well, Mr. Faisal, sir, thank you so much for having me. Before I share my views, I would like to share that today's the Modi regime in India is using the same, theory of fascism which was used by the Adolf Hitler or Mussolini, having with that, monopolitic ideologies, fascist-led ideology, which they try to, it is not only, I would say, dividing the Indian nation, but it is resurfacing the long-standing issues based upon the ethnicity, religion, and social. There's no doubt today's India is far more divisive. It's far more, polarized than it used to be. We would say that the Prime Minister Modi regime has been a blessing in disguise for Pakistan. I'm just amazed since I'm from Balochistan. I can say I remember when Prime Minister Modi used to say that we have sympathy with the people of Balochistan. Now I would say what's happening in India. So many separatist movements like Seven Sister States, Nagaland, which has already declared independence. What about Mizoram? What about all those states? So this whole fact speaks volume that there are fault lines which is being only created by the extremist policies of the Prime Minister Narendra Modi. He used to say against Pakistan. Now the same fault lines has been created in India. I mean, he came up with the most controversial laws. National Citizenship Amendment Act and all others, which are not only targeting the minorities, not only Muslim but other minorities like Christians, Sikhs, Dalits all across India. So I think it is high time that the world community, particularly the so-called the champions of human rights, the West, they need to highlight this issue. Needs to be sensitized that the people inside India, Muslims are being subjugated, the minorities are being subjugated. This issue needs to be highlighted in the international arena. Secondly, I would say as far as the Indian hegemonic designs are concerned, they are not only specific to Pakistan, but they are trying to get the international prestige. I'm just amazed when I hear on one hand the Indian have this aspiration to become the member of United Nations Security Council. But on the other hand, it is completely rejecting the United Nations resolution on Kashmir. So I would say, due to the flawed policies of Modi, it is not only creating instability in the region, South Asia, but it would have a long-lasting, cataclysmic impact across the region.
Coming back to the studio now, so this CAA, this particular act, and whether we like it or we don't, it was particularly targeting the Muslim community of India, sir. Minorities in general, but in particular, the Muslim community. Then, earlier than that, there was Article 370, 35A, special status of the Kashmiris was snatched. So, primarily, do you believe that since Modi got a lot of votes in his second term, and that made him believe that everything is possible, he has the power, he has got his own people as the Interior Minister, the External Affairs Minister, as the National Security Advisor and all. Bapit Ravan was given another appointment. So these couple of minds working together, do you believe that this is going to be, because they claim this is the perfect way forward for the glowing India, for the shining India, but a lot of people, a lot of sane people believe that this is a perfect recipe for disaster.
That's true. I think what India is doing, and especially with respect to the present government and this Bharatiya Janata Party, I believe that they have set aside all decent and civilized manners to run a state, and the norms and values which should be there in a democratic state and democratic political system. Now, with the reference to this overwhelming majority of this incumbent government and so-called acclaimed popularity, I believe that India has become the Republic of Fear. And this Republic of Fear means that what thrives there is the politics of fear. And they are goons, they are everywhere, all over the India, the way they are behaving with minorities and the way they are using coercion against minority, using violence against minorities, especially against Muslims, because they are quite intolerant towards Muslims. Yeah. That's very much there, deep rooted in their mindset, the mindset which is called as Hindutva. It is actually born against Muslims. So this is a kind of binary, this is kind of ideology which is born against
Now,
Muslims.
there is a question, is it anti-Muslim or is it pro-Hindu?
I believe that
I believe that
what produces anti-Muslim is also the one which gives life to pro-India so far. Okay. I mean, this is kind of juxtaposition in terms of linguistic, where you produce something out of its opposition. So if you are producing anti-Muslim sentiments in society, it means that you are automatically producing pro-Hindu or pro-Indian sentiments, so-called. So this is kind of a mechanism, which is discursive mechanism in terms of the making of ideology, which is called as social and discursive mechanism of ideology production. So this is how groups produce their ideology.
Dr. Saab, can you force ideologies? India claims to be the largest democracy. Look at the population. I think they've surpassed China, by the way. Perhaps they do not have the right data, but the way they are multiplying, I mean, it's pretty abnormal. The interesting part is, sir, if you're looking at a country where you believe that every almost sixth person in the world, every sixth person is an Indian, sir, in one way or the other, in the form of an NRI or based in India.
Right.
Now, sir, you're talking about 80% population of India is based on Hindus, and then they have got subcastes as well. Rest 20%, sir, is a huge minority. Sikhs, Dalits, Jains, Muslims, Christians, you name it. So when they'll feel threatened, things would go out of hand, and things are getting out of hand, sir. And the most interesting part is, sir, that when you talk about Narendra Modi was supported by the corporate structure of the India, financially and otherwise. Ambanis and Mittals and Tatas, capitalist mindset. This is exactly what he is following. On the other hand, you are talking about a couple of indigenous groups. they believe in an opposite theory, theory of equality, theory of Marxism, theory of Lenin. Put together, everybody is equal. Absolute clash of ideologies. Your take, sir.
Yes, a clash of ideology is very much there, and it is wide open for everyone. Even a person is blind, he can see the clash of ideologies in India, which is, by the way, indigenous.
Man
And-
is lynched just because he was carrying a cow.
Yes.
Imagine.
So the reason is that this ideology is a kind of a recipe which is self-destructive. So what BJP is doing, or India under BJP has done so far, it has actually done a damage which is irreparable for Indian state as well as for Indian society.
Correct.
So they don't need any enemy. So they are they are their own enemies. So they don't need external enemies. So they are producing enemies indigenously. They are quite capable, and now I would say that they have sufficient power to produce enemies from within. So this is what they are doing actually. So they are becoming self-sufficient in the production of enemies with respect to Indian state. So I believe that the recipe, which is recipe of disaster, is very much there in India when we talk about these ideologies and the clash of ideologies. What BJP and the other Indian governments have done in India, especially in that red corridor which we are discussing today, it includes states from southeast to northwest. So almost 10 states are there, with
Primarily,
120 million people, those who are living in those states. So the condition of minority is quite deplorable there. And keep in mind that this red corridor is also a mineral basket of India. So this red corridor is actually full of resources,
Sir,
natural
food production,
resources.
your cement production,
Yes.
your forests, your beef primarily is coming from, I'm only talking about Chhattisgarh.
Yes,
Breast, rice, educated people.
that's true.
The real mind. Now, let me take another point to Munir Saab, and that is regarding another very interesting aspect. Munir Saab, now, when we talk about different cultures, different religions, different ethnic people from various different backgrounds, perhaps their education level is different, and the backgrounds, they're pretty different as well. And we're not talking about a state that is bordering, like for example, we had an issue in FATA that was bordering Afghanistan. It was a porous border. I'm talking about a state which is inside India, sir, covered and bordering the other states. And this state, interestingly, has around 40-45% of forest. And these people just vanish. Nobody could do anything. Don't you think whatever India did in Sri Lanka, and especially in Jaffna, this is part 2 of the same story, sir, but interestingly happening inside India, made in India, made for India. Your take, sir, Munir Saab?
Yeah, you are very right. Like maybe like 10, 15 years back, we used to hear a slogan, "Incredible India." Now it's terrible India, basically. And you might also have visited India and Nepal and Sri Lanka and the neighboring countries. And everyone is, facing trouble from India. And now, over the 1 decade, Indian state itself facing a lot of issues from within, as the other gentleman said, like they don't need any external enemies, but they are also creating side-by-side external enemies. Look at the differences with China. They were having, armed scuffles with China as well. And Federal Republic, they have tarnished the image of Federal Republic. And they are not taking care of the other cultures, other religions living over there. They are trying to make it. And if you travel even into the major cities of India, you will see that how people are suffering over there. They are living their suppressed lives. And this is the situation. So India has to look into if we really want to be a good neighbor and a good state for their own people. And this is now the state is that even the opposition parties are taking very bluntly on the government. Their writers, their journalists, they are writing against their own state of affairs very bluntly. And this is the situation they are facing. And can you believe the Modi government has made their government very like a disastrous recipe for the regional peace itself. And it is not only the US and India relationship that would help them survive in the region, but that would be their more harmony and friendly relations with the neighborhood that will help India survive and prosper in the region. So they have to be tolerant about others. They have to take care of, look, the international reports. US religious watchdog, they have continuously, in the last 2 years, they have highlighted.
Sir, look at the latest report that was issued a few days ago. I mean, regarding the human rights, they have categorically mentioned about it.
This is what I'm referring to. And look, the consecutive 3 reports of UN human rights watchdog. You know, they have written, and European Union has also published a report about the atrocities. And these reports not only include atrocities against Kashmiris and Muslims, but also the lower castes over there. So India has to look into the violations, and without looking into such kind of violations, India cannot be a good neighbor. They need to be with 1.6 billion people. They are a big democracy, and as constitutionally they are federal republic, they need to prove to be a federal republic. The gentleman said that pro-India, this is not pro-India. This is pro-Hindu approach they are following for the more than a decade now.
Now, interestingly, these rebels are not Muslims. They are primarily
they are not
Hindus.
Muslims.
Hindus, that's what I'm saying. The man, I mean, they're looking forward to rest is Hidma, and then there is another one, Sujata. And it is believed, I mean, the number varies from various reports. I mean, one says it's around 20,000 rebels. Few have claimed there are around 30,000 rebels. Now, the interesting part is, sir, when I went through this story later on, I mean, there was this officer of the Indian police who claimed that we have also learnt, I mean, he has also learnt, he's not sure, that around 12 rebels were also killed, just to tell the public that, see, it wasn't a failing operation, it wasn't a failure at all. If it was an intelligence-based operation, though it was an absolute disaster and a failure for the Indian government, but they were still trying to, cover it up. Now, the interesting part, Munir Saab, is that the kind of weapons these rebels used, they had automatic machine guns, and they had RPGs, rocket-propelled grenades also. So they were very well equipped because they were challenging the top-notch police commandos. So, sir, when it comes to the support, do you think they have this indigenous support, or do you think some external factors are there as well?
Do you remember a couple of reported where their own people, their own rebels, and they snatched weapons from their own forces. So this is the situation. They are snatching the weapons from their own forces and using against their own forces. As the gentleman said, they don't need external elements because uh, they are, look at the situation of the farmers. They were not Muslims only. They were like from different castes, the lower caste, and even the major caste of from Hindus as well. They were protesting unanimously against the policies of India. So India has to realize that if they don't, rectify their policies, they don't behave like a federal republic, their judiciary don't give justice to their people, and their media, like having censorship, sorry, they will not be portraying the right image of India, and it would be destroying themselves. And definitely, it helps Pakistan and other neighborhoods. Now, I was talking to Nepal a couple of days back with their media. They said, thank God, India is facing their own issues very severely. And the same is the case with the Sri Lankans. The neighbors become very happy, like if something happens. But we Muslims always believe in the humanity. We believe like even if the forces of Indian are killed, even then it's a loss of the human lives. We are always pay our condolences to such kind of huge tragedy. They are very precious. But Indian Hindus, Prime Minister Narendra Modi, they should look into such kind of, they have to rectify their policies, and they have to be a federal republic and a just state. Please.
I mean, I think this itself is a huge debate, that is it a federal republic? Now, that is so debatable, Munir Saab. But, sir, since we are running out of time...
Constitutionally, they are said to be, but they are not, of course not.
They claim to be a democracy also. Is that a democracy?
No,
is that
it's not
the way
democracy.
people are treated? Is that the way different religions are like treated? No, sir. Yeah. It doesn't happen that way. But that's what Indian democracy is all about. Perhaps it has a different meaning. It has a different ideology. Yeah. But coming to you, Sangeen Khan Sahab, couple of quick points. Obviously, it was a huge incident. That's why the Union Home Minister, Amit Shah, went to Chhattisgarh, held a couple of very important meetings. And then, they in fact strategized and they made a backup plan. And then whatever was needed. I'm not even sure whether Indian government is actually issuing the right number of casualties. Perhaps it could be much more than what has been reported so far. Because if they were able to take along 21, 22 commandos after killing 24, 25 and injuring about 3 dozen, that means that ambush or whatever that was very well planned. Now, sir, yeah. The Turkish government along with the French government, they have also, obviously they condoled and they said that, it shouldn't have happened. And loss of lives anywhere is always, considered in that way. But, sir, it seems now the proper operation is going to get started in those areas in particular, because India Ready would not like these stories to be published, highlighted, and even when we talk about it, I'm sure we are being observed as well by the Indian side. But it's a big story, so it's a big story. Now, sir, tell me, I mean, if the same ideology continues, the same philosophy perhaps overwhelms the rest of India, do you think, sir, such fault lines will get further exposed? And if so, is India heading towards an absolute disaster? So-called the largest democracy in the world will be facing a couple of challenges, because it seems it is an authoritarian kind of a regime where Mr. Modi has the hunter and the rest are the cattle. Your take, sir.
Well, first of all, we need to understand that due to the flawed and extreme policies of Prime Minister Modi, this has all happened. Whatever wrongdoing they did now they are facing the music. They are having these separatist movements like seven states, Nagaland, Mizoram, and so on and so forth. Still, there are fault lines. As our experts mentioned that. Just imagine what sort of sophisticated, weapons they had. In front of the Indian Army. So if they can, shoot down
Sir,
22
they have
Indian
also
soldiers.
snatched not only the
It
weapons, even they took away their boots, their uniform, their belts and everything.
So this all speaks volume that how unprofessional, how untrained the Indian Army is in front of those, the separatist insurgent groups. So I think once again, it speaks volumes. India has to rethink. The social inequalities going on in India. The Mizoram or the Maoist movement, the insurgents, because it's all they're having this, deep-rooted resentment against the flawed policies against the minorities. So in my humble opinion, it would not stop right here. It will go because whatever they have done the wrongdoing, they would have the setback. They will have to face the music what they have done. So I do not think so. It would right stop here. And most importantly, the Indian will have the word the tarnished image international arena what you're trying to so that so-called democracy. I'm just amazed, they're trying to say we are the biggest democracy in the world due to the flawed and extremist policies of prime minister, specifically of BJP. What they did, what they tried to sell back in 2014 election manifesto, we would come up, we'll boost economic growth. Did they do? No, they didn't. Again in 2019 they came up with this election manifesto that trying to raise this slogan anti-Pakistan, anti-Muslim. So to do the line in future, they will be facing much more pressure within public. So I think there's this public resentment against, due to the flawed policies of Narendra Modi.
Now, another point, sir, primarily if you look at the area where there's, east of the chicken neck, let's put it this way, sir. Those 8 states, West Bengal, Assam, Bihar, etc. Then there is this Chhattisgarh down there in the south, and then you have got so many issues even in the northern side of that part. I'm talking about the northeast of India. I think that is the biggest kind of, you may call it a fault line. You may also call it the demography and, interestingly, the geography, both. That doesn't suit the Indians, sir. Perhaps the population ratio, as far as the diversity in religion is concerned, a lot is there. Do you think, sir, those areas could be exploited?
Yes, I do think so. As far as the fault lines are concerned, it's a $1 million question. What sort of weaponry they had? How did it come? Why not
The
there
Indian
had been
military
a
claims they
contingency
had
plan from the Indian
automatic,
professional army?
high-powered machine guns. They did not name which ones. They also said that they had RPGs, so they had the rocket-propelled grenades also. And plus, whatever they have looted from the dead soldiers and those who were taken hostages, they have those weapons as well. So I'm sure they are loaded.
Exactly. So the question the $1 million question is: are they prepared enough? Indian government, what the Indian are trying to do? I think if they really want to stabilize the situation, they really need to understand the sentiments of the people. They really need to bring down, mitigate the hatred, the bigotry which they had done in their own public. Otherwise, it would have a long lasting. Let me tell you, they have much sophisticated. They can push back the Indian army no matter what, how many operations they do. But the fact remains, the Indians are not allowing their media to bring the information into the public domain. I'm of the view, no, I think they have much more damage done to the Indian army. So that's why they are not giving the information to the public.
Sir, right after the incident, Amit Shah was in that particular area holding some very important meetings. That tells you the tells you about the magnitude of the overall incident. But anyway, sir, thank you very much. Munir Saab, It was a pleasure having you. Thank you so much, Sangeen Khan Saab. And thank you so much, sir, for your presence as well. And interestingly, now when we talk about the facts, there is a long list. I mean, couple of the names I also missed. Just give you a quick recap. Jammu and Kashmir, Assam, Nagaland, Tripura, Bodoland, Kamtapur, Karbi Longri, NC Hills, Zumi areas, Hyderabad, Karbi Longri, Adivasi areas, Dibaraji, Punjab, Khalistan. I mean, the list goes on and on and on and on and on. That is what India is all about. I think high time for Narendra Modi to sort of sit and think positively, because this is not how he's going to exploit Pakistan. He should look after his own problems, own fault lines, own issues, look inwards rather than trying to destabilize Pakistan and the region. But anyway, I'll see you tomorrow, inshallah. Till then, you look after yourself. Have a great day. Khuda Hafiz.